During my time studying constellations, I looked for an audio way to learn more about this approach with little success. So I made it my mission to reach out to very well-known facilitators and gather their answers from years of experience for some of the most popular topics like relationships, money, illness, career, and more. My hope from these conversations is to shine a light into the dynamics that often play in our lives that impact us greatly, but we often overlook. My name is Macarena Ferreira. Welcome to the Family Constellations podcast. I'm so excited for this one. Can you please tell us how you got started with constellations and specifically organizational constellations? What was your first experience like? How did you find this work?
Yeah, so I have been a transition and leadership coach since 2000. And about 5 years ago, I wanted to grow more as a coach and was thinking of upskilling myself and broaden myself as a coach and think of new tools and new ways that I could use in my coaching sessions. And via just talking to other people and networking, I ended up doing a 3-day course in Sydney, which turned out to be a course which was about coaching, but also constellations. And I realized that I had participated in constellations before, years ago in the Netherlands, before I arrived in Australia, which is now over 18 years ago, in the 90s. And yeah, I fell in love with it, and that was the start. And then from there on, I got it more into training myself into organizational constellations and systemic work, and that was it.
Wow, fantastic. Can you tell us what was the event, or who was that first point of contact in your training in Sydney?
It was a mix of coaches. It was the company Leading Well with Vanessa Fudge and David Fudge and a few other coaches. Mm-hmm. And so that was the start. So they're still also doing systemic and organizational constellations work in Australia as well. And they had done it for a few years, and they have been involved with Carolyn Ward from the UK a lot. Mm-hmm. And after I got trained more in organizational constellations, I first went back to family constellations. So I trained with Maria Dolench in Sydney. And then I got to the Bert Hellinger Institute, which was the organizational constellation training. And since then, I also got into contact and in collaboration with John Whittington from the UK. Together, we now will organize workshops and trainings also for people to become a systemic coach and learn more about constellations in organizations in November this year in Sydney. So he will be here and will give 2 days training, plus also a workshop on mapping your leadership authority. Mm-hmm. And another one, which is a little bit of an overlap between organization and family, which is to do with leavings and endings. So that's to do with endings also when you end your job in an organization. And because that sometimes is overlooked, how important it is to create a good ending. But it's also ending to do with death in family, for example, or with people who have to look after their elderly parents and are in the process of walking their parents home, or people that are in a sandwich situation. So they still have kids to look after and they have their parents to look after. So those courses will be in Sydney soon. And actually, if you're still interested, you have to be quick. There's only a few spots left on each one.
Mm-hmm. That is fantastic. I love how the work of constellation transcends culture, language, how we see it everywhere in the world. Like, it's incredible.
Absolutely. It is incredible. Yes.
Can you explain, mostly for our listeners that may not know, the main difference between like family constellations and organizational constellations, how constellations translates into the workspace, and why is it important, or why should people care about this? How can it help them in their lives?
Like a family, an organization, or a department, they're all systems. And in a system, you belong or you do not belong. So you're part of a family or you're not part of that family. The same is with organization. in an organization, what also is there that belongs is, for example, the people who have left. It's the people who work there, but also the people who have worked there in the past. It's like with your family, your ancestors are part of your family system. That's the same in an organization. Also, all the products that or services that are done, but also the failures of products which didn't go well. That's all part of the system as well. And like in a family, also in organizations, there are unconscious patterns that have emerged over the years, hidden loyalties and invisible dynamics. And when problems occur, and reoccur or recur, and teams are stuck and people are disengaged, then it might be time to look at these possible hidden dynamics or these issues from a different way than a normal problem-solving way. And a great tool to use for this is constellations. It really gives clarity to the root causes of challenges and problems, and that can assure long-lasting results.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit of what are some of those common struggles that you find in your profession? What are Aussie companies that you helped struggling with the most? Or I'm sure there are some things that come up quite regularly, regardless of what field the company is in.
Yeah, so most recently, I guess, because of COVID, there has been a lot of questions around reintegrating, so hybrid working, people who were working from home and now getting back into the workplace, and what does that look like? And also to be a team again, because a team, virtual team, and then actually in the office is different again. So how to reconnect? So that's often a question which has been asked recently. Also, with leaders who work in an organization and there's different departments, but they're actually very much silos. They don't really communicate and interact well. And then the constellation is really interesting to find out, what's the reason behind it. Are there some hidden patterns which cause that interaction between relationships between different departments is not really happening so much, or what has been happening in the history, which we should have a look at as well. Conflict in teams, but also having the team create the results that you want as a leader. Example is when a leader has left on maybe bad terms, has not really been a good ending and a good goodbye. And the new leader has come in, and on paper and on, when you look at his skills, experiences, education, very good, nothing wrong. Same with the team members, very educated, very skilled, etc. But the team is not working. And what then can happen is that the team is still loyal to the previous leader because there hasn't been a proper goodbye. I mean, an acknowledgement, because maybe that person has left on bad terms, but has also contributed to the business. So it's about that give and take, and also acknowledges what that person has done. And that's still possible to be healed through constellation. Create that acknowledgement through constellations, and the person that has left doesn't have to be there. Then the organization can flow again and can continue with the new team and the new leader. So those kind of dynamics we come across quite a bit. So so conflict in teams, but sometimes it has to do with people that already have left in the past. A lot you see about, or we hear about, people feeling unseen, unheard. And again, COVID time has changed those dynamics a bit as well. So people are disengaged, talent is walking away, and ending of working relationships, and how to go about that. Those are probably the most common topics we have come across recently.
When you're speaking about this, it's coming to my mind. How do you as a professional approach a CEO or a team with systemic work that maybe some people are unaware of, or they don't really know? Some people can think it's kind of like woo-woo or not a logical way, or something that we see a lot yet in workplaces. How do you approach it when obviously someone's hired you, you come in? How do you present your plan, or how do you investigate without getting that rejection or that resistance to the work?
Yeah, it's still a challenge, to be honest, Macarena. Sadly, in Australia, the work is not very well known yet, and it's very different in Europe, where in Holland and in UK and in Germany, it's already been happening for 30 years, so a lot of people have heard of it. It's still trying to find out what is the best way of explaining, because it is not immediately easy to explain. And what I've learned is not only, get into the tool itself, what is a constellation, but also what do you get out of it? What are the results? And especially in organizations and leaders, they're very much focused on, okay, if I'm going to pay you for your coaching or your consulting, what do I get out of it? What's my return on investment? So I really had to think a little bit more in sales terms, and I still find that a challenge sometimes because I love my work as a coach, but the part of creating the clients is a different process. But it's really thinking, what does that mean? What will they get out of it? What will the possible results be? And then once they understand and understand that it's more a holistic approach and a slightly different approach, we have a phenomenological is another word we use. So it's not an analytical tool the way we do it, but it's more through experience. We often tell them, let's just experience it first. Come and join us for a constellation. So we have these workshops, 2-hour workshops, a taster workshop. So come and have a taste as what it is we do and what impact and result you will see while doing it. And then, then that's normally when people are really wowed and think like, this is powerful. This is immediate. This is about going to the root cause of problems, not to trying to solve problems, but go to the root cause. And it's immediately clear what needs to be done. So it's not like a long action plan, but it's immediately clear. So those are the advantages we then trying to, show them by doing this way of consultancy coaching.
Yeah. Additionally to what you were speaking with this like COVID office, out of office team dynamics, you also spoke to me team culture. What is something that employers can do, but also employees? How do you see it from a systemic point of view? The responsibility, like it's employer meant to set the culture and then it flows down to employees. Employees can put on their 2 cents to improve the culture. How do you see it?
Yeah, so culture, I guess, is always a thing which, you can't do on your own. It has to be the big organization and it always is the best if it's top driven. But sometimes, it's not always easy. But when you look at it from a systemic point of view, there's actually 4 principles which we also then use in our coaching in terms of culture and team culture. We often start with team culture with an assessment. I've been trained now with Team Connect, which is a team assessment tool by Jan Jacob Stam. So he was also involved in the Bert Helling Institute, and he is one of the founders of Organisational constellations in Europe. But then also, from a systemic point, so more looking at it from zooming out, not into the analytical detail, but more zooming out. What is the reason for its existence for the team? And the reason the existence was there maybe 10 years ago, is that still relevant today? Other systemic reasons or a way of looking at culture is looking at the 4 principles. The first principle is the sense of belonging. So when you start with assessment and look at people's engagement, you can then see if the organization is fostering this sense of belonging and connection. And that's one of the biggest individual principle of doing systemic work and coaching is, what is it with belonging and what does that mean? And the other thing we look at in terms of culture and in systemically is the orders. Orders means the roles of each individual people. Is your role, or from every individual person, is it clear in the organization? Are the way the department's structured, is that clear? You have departments which look more outward to society, like sales and marketing, they look outside. There are departments which are more supportive to the organization, which is HR and IT. If it's a manufacturing, then you have some other departments as well, which support the product itself. Mm-hmm. And is it really clear for everyone what their role is? And do they occupy the role? And Are you in the right place and in the right order, and is it clear? For example, what could happen when there is an issue is that someone, a team member, becomes a confidant of the manager. We call that also, it could be parentification or triangulation. And maybe that person used to do that in the family situation as well, when the mother was ill and stepped in as a mother in the family. And that's a sort of a pattern which that person also takes with them into an organization. When people realize that, or when we realize that in analysis, is like, okay, yes, you've been a kind of a confidant to a manager, but it's not your place. And maybe there was a reason for it, that you were drawn into it because there was a problem, there was an issue. But if that issue is not there anymore, step back in you being a team member. Is it clear to the whole organization? That's really important for the culture as well. So the culture can be embedded in the total organization. Is it really clear what the purpose is and what the leading principle is of the organization or the department? But it's always with the link to society. It's not an internal purpose, but what is our purpose in society? And it could be that there is an end of a purpose or a leading principle. And one of the examples is, if you were a company in telephone booths, everybody has mobile phone now, so it's not necessary in society anymore. So it's really time to end it. It's finished. And that's a big difference to family. So you'll never end being in a family system, but it can be possible that the organization system will have to end, or your end as the organization system. I hope that answered your question.
That's fascinating. I love it. You mentioned this of like undervalued employees. I think that's something one of the greatest complaints in companies is not feeling valued. What advice could you give to an employee that feels this way? What is something that they can do from their role and their position in a company?
I am a coach. So normally I don't give advice straight away or a tip. My first question would be, if I come across someone and really does not feel valued or seen or heard enough, so how do you value yourself? That's my first question. Secondly is, what is it that you need to hear or want to have recognition for? So what is it specifically?
Mm-hmm. And do you think that is something that these people are bringing from their family conscience, perhaps into the work environment where they don't feel value in their own life, in their own family, and they replicate it at work?
And then that can be explored in a constellation, because you can put in a constellation yourself and your boss, or it could be, yourself and your mother and your father, and that could have a relationship with each other. And your boss could almost be seen as your parents as well. With this, and when you look at it from an employee point of view, it's really about, how much do I value myself? And if you really value yourself, can you then express that and be assertive about what is it you really want, and what do you want recognition for? Is maybe not to ask, can I get the recognition? Boss, I really want this compliment. But you can then have the discussion, I feel that this is my value, this is what I'm doing, and I'm really proud of myself and I'm doing it really well. I would like to be be more involved in the management team, in presentations. I like to step up a little bit more. And, what is it that you want? What does it look like when you are valued? And what does it look like in the organization when you are seen and what heard? What does that feel like? What does that look like? What do you want to change, to have to see changed?
If that, for example, was happening, the employees spoke up about their value and what they need, and then the employer does not meet them at their request, or disregards their comments, or there is no action from a conversation.
Apart from looking at it systemically and having that constellation, and I think it's always, you can never change someone else. That's one of the things also in constellations. If we were doing some movement in constellations, you can actually never ask for someone else to move. You can only move yourself. A facilitator can help in that movement process and can ask something, but you cannot do it yourself. If a boss doesn't change or not really listen to you, you cannot become the parent or the boss and tell the boss what to do, because then you're parentification and you step out of your role and you step out of your place. So you have to stay in your place as an employee And then I think you get a little bit out of that systemic work, because then it's more to do with negotiation skills and convincing skills and being assertive. So it's more kind of a skills training rather than just you're purely looking at it systemically. Because I think you have to also, big part of systemic work is accept the situation as it is, and accept that the leader is your leader or is your boss. And within those dynamics, see what you can do and what you feel happy with.
Very interesting. That actually kind of links to my next question, that is actually from one of our listeners. That is, she's saying, how do you deal with a boss that doesn't want to change? Do you treat them like a child and give them what they want? For example, the boss is asking for a specific remuneration target without any other considerations and refuses to listen. Is it a good idea to satisfy his request and get them off your back? Or what strategy can be implemented from a constellation point of view? From your answer, I can see that perhaps this is exactly what you were speaking about just now, parentification, right? Can you speak a little bit more on this parentification?
Yes, so parentification means that if you look at a family, you have your parents and you're the child. And if you feel that you know better than your parent, you become the parent of your parents. So that's called parentification. So you feel you're better and you know better. And that's not your place as a child. So that's similar in organizations. If you think like, oh, I know better, I should treat him as a child, I need to tell him what he needs to do, it's not your place. You will disturb the energy within that organization. You are an employee and the boss is your boss. So you can try that, but it won't create a good result for you. So it's still trying to find out how you as an employee, what you like to get out of it. And then, yes, so sometimes it's, like I said before, not systemic, but it's to do with negotiation or convincing skills or etc. And just say, like a child to a mother or father, what you would like. You can only express what you would like out of that relationship, would like out of the remuneration package, or whatever the reason is that you want that change. To have that discussion, you can express that you like to be heard and that you like to be listened to, and that you like that he or she listens to your argument and your reasoning. And yes, you can decide to leave it, but are you really happy then? If you're really struggling, I think it's the most important thing is to think, what is authentic you? Who are you, and what drives you, and what is your passion, and what do you want to get out of your job? And it's in that relationship and that discussion, I think, it should go with the leader, with your boss.
Do you think that if it's something that comes deeply from the personal, that is very likely that this person will perhaps move into a different job and have the same thing happen again?
It can happen. Yeah, that can be the case. It depends. It's also good to understand what the reason is that the leader doesn't want to change. There might be a good reason for it. That needs to be investigated a bit more before I can say, this is always how you should respond. But yeah, certainly when that person leaves and comes in another situation and the same thing happens again, then you get into a recurring pattern. Then it's more interesting to look at it systemically and have a constellation.
Okay. There is a famous quote that says, if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life. Is this true? Is it attainable? What is your opinion, your observations? Why do we put so much value in our career and profession? What's your take?
We do put a lot of value in our career and profession, but if you think about it, if you have a full-time job, it's 40 hours. You almost spend more time than in family time in that job. And also becomes your identity. It's a status thing. It all comes back to, who are you? What is your passion? What can you do? So I always like to look at it from the inside out approach. What is really you, and what would give you a lot of energy rather than it takes energy? And that, which job would suit you best, which gives you a lot of energy. And when you're being authentic and true to yourself, then I believe, yes, your job is not a job, is something which will just happen. And of course, every job, but also every life is with ups and downs and with some struggles. Nothing is perfect. And there's always parts of a job which you like a little bit less than other parts of a job. But if it's something that really gives you energy and you're passionate about, I always find as a coach to talk with people about their purpose. What is your purpose? Your purpose to society, your purpose to yourself. What makes you really happy? What makes you satisfied? What fulfills you? Fulfills you is maybe even a better word. And if you do a job that really fulfills you and that you feel it has this great purpose, then things do go automatically. And also when you are very busy or even stressed, it's positive stress, because it's stress that you want to achieve something to go for that purpose. And that's, I think, the difference when you feel like, okay, I need a job because I really need the money. And of course we all need money, right? We live in Australia, we live in an expensive country. And it's always that trade-off of balance of work and life and family and money. But if it's not in a job that you don't feel really fulfilled in or with a great purpose, then it will be a struggle.
From your life experience, what is an exercise or a way young people can find their purpose or what they really enjoy and be able to translate that into work?
I ask the question often to people, if you were now winning $40 million, say, what would you do? If money is not an issue, what would you do? So that's often a great question to really think like, oh my gosh, if money wasn't an issue, what do I do? Okay, you first maybe say, I'm going to travel and I buy a house so that I don't have a mortgage anymore or my family members. But okay, once you've done all of that, what would you then do with your time and with your life? That's a good question. Another question I ask people is, imagine you're now 5 or 10 years ahead, older than you are now. Just imagine, have a relaxed environment, breathe in, breathe out, and then look back over to those last 5 years, the last 10 years, and really think, what are you most proud of that you have done? So imagine, 10 years ahead, what are you most proud of that you've done? So those are a few questions to really think, what is my purpose? What is my passion? There are two different questions, but there is a relationship there. And another model I like to suggest, but it's more, I give that as a tip to look up, is the Japanese model Ikigai. I don't know if you've heard it, which really looks at your purpose from different levels. So a purpose in terms of your passion, and a purpose in terms of what gives you a lot of energy, but also what would be easy to make money, at different aspects. And it's called Ikigai, Ikijai. I have a book called The Purpose Project, and that's where, it's a podcast, so I can't show you, so that it goes into purpose, like what do you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. And if you combine those 4, that is your purpose.
I love that. I actually think I've heard of this before, but I didn't know where it stemmed from. I will leave it on the show notes so that people can find it. On the contrary of what we were just saying, if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life. What do you think about employees that just show up, do the minimum work required, no their effort, no the passion goes into the role, they just there and they go home? Are they in the wrong field? Is there something for them, or are just some people meant to find like their dreams, have this utopia of a career, and some people just have this kind of mediocre jobs? What is your take?
Yeah, when you talk about mediocre or so what I try to do, and I know that's not always easy, is not to judge people. People have different situations and different reasons why they go in certain jobs. And sometimes it is about money and they just need to get a job, and then at 5 o'clock they leave and they're going back to their family, and that's fine too. I've been a career coach for 20 years, and you have different people. So some people are really ambitious. They love to think about purpose. They love to think about passion. and other people have found something they want to do, and they don't want actually to, they already know they don't want to be a manager, they don't want to be a leader, they just like a certain expertise they have, and they like to work with that. And it might seem for other people boring, but for them, it's, that's their life. They're happy with that. And that's the way they have organized their life and their work and their work-life balance. So I think it's very individual. It's very individual. And maybe it says something, the way you ask the question, it says something about you, Macarena, how you are thinking about this for yourself, right? In terms of your job and what is for you fulfillment, and what is boring and what is not boring, and what is passionate and not passionate, and do you want to really work with a purpose or not? What is important to you?
Amazing. Well, that's all the questions I have for today. It's been incredible to chat with you. There is so much there. Oh my God, you left me speechless a couple of times.
That's nice. That's interesting. It was amazing to be here with you, Macarena. I'm really very happy that you started this process of the podcast. I think it's important that people, and certainly in Australia, know more and more about the systemic work and constellations. So thank you so much for taking that initiative. And it was great to be with you.
That was truly a great episode with Ingrid. She's so amazing. If you would like to get in touch or know more about her, I will leave everything on the show notes, as well as the books, workshops, and events that we talked about. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share and subscribe. See you on the next one.